Hey everyone, Hunter here again. Um, I just finished up the tutorial, actually part one of doing proper decal installation with your water slide decals. So actually in that video I used the same body, and the decal that you see on the roof is the decal that was applied during that tutorial. That's still actually drying up a little bit. Just did that like probably 20 minutes ago. So the next thing that I want to work on is I've been asked about this a lot, is how I get the shine on my paint finishes. So I'm going to do a little tutorial here on how to go about wet sanding, buffing, and getting the real shiny paint jobs that I try to get on all my models. So we're going to get right into this here. Like I said before, this body is just a scrap body that I use. It has been painted with House of Color paints, and it has been cleared with DuPont clear. Um, so I'm just going to pick a spot on it and show you basically my technique for wet sanding and buffing that works for me. Now, please remember that if you are using an enamel or any other type of paint other than what I'm using here, this whole procedure may change. It may work, it may not work. Um, but this is with the House of Color paint and the DuPont Clear, which is something that I highly recommend to a lot of people. It works. It gives you a very nice finish. It's very durable. And so let's get right into this. What I have here is a piece of 3M 2000 grit wet dry paper. This is what I use for my initial getting started on sanding the paint to start the whole buffing process. I'm just going to go back here on the quarter panel. It's up on top. It's easier to see. Let me hold it up here closer to the camera. That's pretty much the way it was sprayed. It's pretty flat, but not flat enough. So I just dip my paper in the water there, and you just lightly want to work this back and forth over top of your surface. Not putting a lot of pressure on it. Try to keep it away from anything that rolls over an edge. You don't really want to do that right now. We'll go back and do that later. I'll show you how to do your edges of your paint without cutting through them. Hopefully, I was buffing out my Lamborghini Gallardo the other day, and I got a little bit too happy with the sanding and went right through a corner, so I had to go back and touch that up. But it's all back to square one now. It looks pretty good. So like I say, I'm just lightly going over this with the paper. Some people go back and forth in a straight line. I will do that to a certain point. But then when I'm almost to the point where I think I've got it right, I will take the paper and kind of swirl the paper a little bit. That seems to knock out a lot of the linear lines that I get, the sand scratches that I get in the finish. So once I get it to that point, I'll take my blue shop towels that I use, and I'll wipe that down until it's dry. Now, what you're looking for at this point is, it's going to be real hard to show up in the camera, so I'm going to have to explain what we're looking for here. The majority of where you have sanded this finish will be a matte finish. It'll be dull. Anywhere there is an indentation, which is your valley of your orange peel, it's going to show up as a shiny speck. That's what you're trying to eliminate. Now in this one, I actually have a shiny speck right here, and I have one here, and there's one over here. Now, to get rid of those, you would go back to, you don't really want to do the whole surface because you've already sanded this pretty good. It's flat. You may take a chance on cutting through if you sand on this too much. So I'll go back to like where this little speck is, and pretty much just do the same procedure, but right over top of that little speck. And you don't want to cut this too much, trying to get these little specks out, because you could cut through the finish. So just be careful of what you're doing and dry this off. And that little speck that I was looking at is now gone. So that tells me, now that, remember I had the two little specks here, I'm not going to worry about that right now. This is just a demonstration. If this was going to be one of my competition models, yes, I do go back over and get all those little specks out, because in competition you have to. So I've got this wiped down, and it's sanded, and it's a dull finish, and that's what you're looking for. Now, the next part of the procedure that I do is to take a small piece of, guess what? The blue shop towel again. I like these because I think they have a little bit more teeth than a lot of the towels I've tried. So I do use these pretty much on everything that I wet sand and buff. So if you can run out, you can get these at Walmart. You can get them at various different places, but get a roll of them, and they're very handy things to have. In fact, I have a roll over here behind me on a paper towel holder, and that's pretty much all I use here in the hobby room as far as paper towels. Okay, the next product that we're going to be using is the Tamiya compound, and this is the coarse compound, the one with the red writing on it. I'm just going to squeeze a little bit of that out onto the shop towel, and we're going to put it on the surface here, and we're just basically going to, buff this around. You don't need a lot of pressure with this. Just kind of buff it around. And this stuff is, I tried this about probably 3 months ago, and I've been absolutely amazed with it. I usually buff it until this stuff, you can tell when it dries, because it kind of gets a pasty feel to it. But I usually just buff it around until it dries, and you will see an amazing difference here. Let me get my cloth that I wiped this off with. Now I'm just going to go back in and wipe off the excess. And I think this probably could have stood to have a little bit more clear on it. But this will give you an idea of where we're at with that part. You can see the shininess in that already, and that's just with one compound. There is a little spot there in the center that I think what happened is I didn't have enough clear on this. And, I didn't even paint this for getting a total coverage of clear on it. But that's just something that you got to watch for. When you're setting up a body to be wet sanded and buffed, make sure you get enough clear on the finish, so you lessen your chances of cutting through it. Now, the next compound that I go to is the Tamiya fine compound with the blue writing on it. So it's basically the same thing that we used the first time, same as the red, just a little bit lighter. Same procedure. You're going to just move it around just like you did with the red. And you'll let it go, pretty much dry just like you did with the red. Don't rub it too much after it goes dry, because what will happen is you'll end up getting real minute scratches in it. And you don't really want to do that, because that's what you're trying to get away from. You're trying to get all those out of it. You don't want to put them back in it. And same thing, we just take our cloth and we wipe that down. And I'll hold it back up here so you can see it with the, there it is on the top of that quarter panel. That's with the fine compound. Next, we are going to move on to, let me get another piece of cloth here. Next, we are going to move on to the compound with the silver writing. This is a finish compound. Has very little teeth in it. But this is where you really start seeing your finish come alive. And gets out all the little minute sand scratches and buffing scratches that you have from the previous compounds. like I say, these little tubes of this stuff they're a little expensive, but well worth the money. You also can use Novus products on doing this. It's the same procedure. If you want to use Novus, in fact, I have all of the Novus compounds here. This is the number one. This is like when I've got my models getting ready to go to a show, I'll go over it with this. This is the number 3 compound, which is the heavy scratch remover, which is pretty much the red compound from Tamiya. And this is the number 2, and it is pretty much the blue compound from Tamiya. It works the same way. It's personal preference. These are actually cheaper, and you get more than you do for the Tamiyas. So it's just personal preference on whichever one you would like to use. Either one of them are good products, so I'm not going to say one's better than the other one. I think they do about the same thing. The Tamiya for me just seems to work a little better. So, all right, so I have this buffed out with the finish compound from Tamiya. And from that point there, you've pretty much got a smooth, shiny surface, no pits in it, no orange peel. Looks very good to me. It would work well for competition. When I sprayed this, like I say, this whole thing was an experiment, so it's got what I call a little bit of blushing in the paint. And that's just from the metallic spread when I sprayed it. And this was an experiment color. And I had to actually practice a little bit to learn it. And this is actually the color that I ended up putting on my Tamiya new Beetle that I done. And I learned a lot with it. So at that point there, you are wet sanded, you are buffed, you have a very smooth finish. And the only other thing that I go and do next is I use what they call the model wax. It's the final detail. Very good product. You don't have to use this for a wax. You can use just about any carnauba wax that they make. I also, from time to time, use the Meguiar's Cleaner Wax. Very good product, and you get a lot more of it. Any type of wax, liquid wax like that, is going to work good once you have it to this point. All wax is doing is just protecting the finish. So, same thing. A little bit of the wax on a piece of, you guessed it, the blue shop towel. Rub it around a little bit. Just kind of buff it in. Just like that. And you'll move over to your other cloth and you just want to buff this off. And you will really feel how smooth and slick the surface gets. And, you know, people call it a mirror reflection. Yeah, I can see stuff that's, you know, actually I've got a light on my ceiling and it's got a grid in it. And it's probably, I'd say about 6 feet above my head. And I can clearly see the grill in this paint. So that's pretty smooth. But pretty much that's all there is to wet sanding and buffing. It is time consuming. Not everybody is going to want to do it. But it is a necessary evil, especially if you're going to be into competition. You know, and I must say this, I've got pretty good at turning out smooth and shiny paint jobs, but with me going to competitions all the time, I see cars out there that are done, or paint jobs that are done, that are just absolutely phenomenal. And I don't even know if 10 years from now I can get up to that level. But I'm pretty successful at, you know, the way that I do it now. So, you know, I'm very particular. So I think if you try this technique, you will really be impressed with how your paint jobs are coming out. And like always, if you have any questions, just leave me a comment on this video, and I'll be more than glad to help you out with any problems that you may have. So we're going to wrap it up today for the wet sanding and buffing process. The next tutorial I'll be working on part number 2 of our decals that we worked on in part 1. So hopefully that'll help you out with getting some much shinier paint finishes on your models. And until next time, have at it and practice that, and get you a scrap body and just do some practicing on it before you actually do it on a model that you're ready to use for a finished model. And like I say, if you have any questions, just leave me a comment and I'll be more than glad to help you. And we'll talk to you here in the near future again. Thanks for watching.